This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 381 for Thursday, November 5th, 2020. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Megan Townsend is back. You can find her at @OMeganTownsend on all the social media that matters, and twitch.tv/OMeganTownsend, where I see that yet more Spiritfarer is being played. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you? Ferrying a lot of spirits lately.
Yes. I'm curious because it's been a solid month since the last time we talked, I think, about Spiritfarer. How is that progressing? Like, is it because that's a long time to be playing that game? Like, it's pretty chill, but like, is there still a lot of content to get through?
Yeah, it's so I'm still trying to figure it out. A lot of it is it's meant to be a very chill game, so it's a very long form, chill management sim. So there is a lot of story to get through and a lot of character. Like, I just found a new character, probably like a few days ago. A new pair of characters, but they're marketed as like the same. I should say marketed. They're animated as like the same entity, but so that's like two brothers, and one of them is like a little tiny hummingbird and then a big boar, like a bison of some kind, but they're brothers.
It's an odd pair.
Yeah, but it's the hummingbird that like lifts the bison and carries him around, so it's really cute. There is some like really fun animation, but like it's Bruce and Mickey, and Bruce is the one who does all the talking and Mickey doesn't talk at all, so he's like the strong silent type, and then Bruce is kind of like the the little, I'm gonna fight you sort of personality. So he's the one who does all the talking. He's like, no, you don't look at the big guy, you look at me. Like, this is like, he kind of has like this sort of like New York, Jersey, Brooklyn kind of accent. That's the accent that I've been giving him. Just like the way his dialogue is written. It's all like it's just, there's no voice acting. It's just
speech
some grunts and sounds here and there and speech balloons. So like, I've been giving some voices to the characters. So Bruce and Mickey are just like, hey, I'm walking here, kind of voices. So it's been kind of a fun exercise in doing some character voices. There's one guy named Larry I found who's like, he's got a very transatlantic accent. See, like, just because he was talking about the big picture. We got to find an actress for the big picture.
Right.
It's been fun doing voices. It kind of became like, let's do some fun voices with Megan on stream while we play Spiritfarer. So it's been a good time, but it's very chill. It's very relaxed. It hasn't got me in the feels just yet. Like the first time, because you eventually have to say goodbye to some of the characters, and the first one actually had me crying on stream.
Wow.
Because it's apparently it's a character that you don't spend a lot of time with her, but like just through dialogue you find out that she was your best friend in life, and like she was your childhood best friend. You would spend summers together in like at her family's house. So one of the places you go visit is her parents' place, and she's got some weird baggage about her family. There are some story things that aren't really clarified, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like, there's still a lot of holes in the story. You can kind of fill in the gaps yourself, I guess, if you think about it. But like, that Gwen, her mom, she didn't really get along with her mom, and like her dad was sick, and she's had some kind of like family baggage that she's still trying to work through, and you don't know exactly what happened, but it was enough for her to be like clearly hurt, and like she kind of has to talk to you about it a little bit. But right now, I think the one that's going to hurt me again the most is your uncle. There's his name is Atul, but he's your uncle apparently in the story. So when he sees you, he's like, oh my God, it's my niece. And he gets really excited, and he's a pretty jovial, like happy guy. But now like we're getting deeper into his story, and it seems like he's got a history of really severe depression, and it's really sad, and you don't know how he died, and it's like you're trying to figure out how he died, and it's like, oh no, this is all kind of, it's framed in a very like cozy, easy to swallow pill.
Right.
But when you like really think about it and it's deeper levels, it's like ooh, this can be pretty emotional. So I think when it comes time for, because he has little side missions, like one of the first side missions for him was to get him some pork chops, because he just had a craving for pork chops.
I remember
and
you
now
saying,
his latest one, now his latest one was fried chicken, and fried chicken reminded him of his dad, and he kind of told you about like how he didn't like watching his dad cook, because his dad seemed really angry while he was cooking, but he made food really delicious. But it was a bittersweet feeling, because it was delicious food, but his dad was just mad about it after like making it for some reason. So you're learning a lot about these characters and their history, but not everything at the same time. Like there's still enough open-ended stuff that you can kind of fill in the blanks yourself, so it's not like bombarding you with background and history, but it still keeps them interesting and engaging. And giving the characters hugs is always very cozy. There's one new character that we found named Giovanni, and he's the husband of another passenger on your boat, Astrid. And your first couple missions for Astrid is like you're hunting down her husband, and she's like, I'm gonna leave him. I don't care anymore. He's a two-timing jerk, when really he's Italian. He's passionate, and he's loves fine food, and he just loves to meet people and make friends, and he's charming, so everyone just falls in love with him because he's a very charming guy. And every time, like when he's in a good mood, like when certain characters are in a good mood, they do things for you. So Giovanni gives you jewels. He's just like, no, don't worry about how it happened. It's a gift. Just take it. Take the gifts. Some beautiful jewels for you. Just go. Have the gift. And then you can sell them for more money, which is good, for updating things. And so everyone is very, like, all the characters are very rich. They all have a lot of like detail to them, even if it's in subtle ways. And some of them have bigger personalities than others, and it's great. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying taking my time on it. And only once have I felt the need to look up a tutorial, or how do I do this, because I was kind of getting stuck because I needed a particular resource to build something to further the story along. But every time I found the resource, I didn't have a particular skill I needed to get the resource, until I looked it up, and it's like, oh, you can find this resource here at this one place that just needs you to double jump up onto a building. And it's like, oh, I can do that. Great. So, but it was one of those tricky things that, because it doesn't hold your hand, really. Like, it tells you exactly what you need to do, but there's still, like, kind of like a puzzle platformer vibe about it, too.
Right.
So, but I'm really liking it, because there's no consequences. If you don't do something, it just means you can't continue on. So when you figure out a way to do it, there you go. There's no time limit. There's no, there's no consequence to like leaving something in the oven too long. There's no consequence for not watering your plants in time. They don't shrivel up and die. They just need water, and then when you water them, they keep growing. So it's nice that like there's no punishment for not doing something in a particular amount of time. So it's good to take your time on it, which I really enjoy. And it's a nice game to play when you still want to play a game, you still want to have a story, you still want to like, do some platforming a little bit, because I like platformer games personally. But it's not going to penalize you for not completing something in a timely manner, which I appreciate.
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same. I find Borderlands 3 has been the same. You get penalized financially. Your bank account is charged for reconstitution fees when you die and have to be re-resed into the world. But you don't lose your guns. You're not set back to the beginning. Like if you're fighting a boss, you spawn right outside. Like it's not like you have to fight the level over again. You're not penalized by time, either in game or like real life time. Like so, none of that matters. And because of the way that Borderlands levels work, at any point there's like a pause in the gun battle where you have to proceed to the next area before the more enemies are going to show up. So if you want to just stop there or take a breather or go to a side mission, like you can do that. And even though the story says we have to rush to disable the laser, there really is no real life rush. If you wanted to stay in character and stay with the story, you could plow through. But if like you got to go pee, you could just go pee. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It has that kind of like intense momentarily, but then casual kind of like approach to it. And I'm glad to hear that you're getting so much out of Spiritfarer, because I really, there's a certain part of me that's kind of old school when it comes to video games because of like how much you either spend on them or spend on the things that run them. I'm still having some issues with my gaming computer, which I've spent probably $1,000 or more on now over the last year. I mean, not all at once, and most of it thanks to the amazing support of people that sponsor my stream. So like not
Twitch
companies, but
man, we love you.
Yeah,
we love
like
you so much.
I mean, basically just amazing fans and people that want to see more streams. With anything from subscriptions to donations, I just kind of put that away, and then when it comes time to buy a new processor, I have a good chunk of that already saved away because of the community, and so that's really helpful and allows, hopefully, knock on wood, for better content for them. So it's like a kind of like a win-win.
Yeah.
But when you are doing that kind of thing and putting that kind of expense into things, you want the games that you play, that you pick up for streaming, to last. Like I don't want to drop $60 in a game and have it be over in 12 hours and have there not a lot of content to it. Because a lot of times I approach streaming with video games like, well, it's content creation. One of the reasons why I spend so much time streaming Minecraft is because it's endless. Like you are the content. Your imagination is the only cap, right? And other games like Satisfactory or No Man's Sky, they're all very sandboxy. And while Spiritfarer has an obvious story to it because of the depth of it and because of how casual it is, there's a lot of depth there. You know, like and if there's ever any kind of like sequel or expansion to it, then it just seems like people could come back to it. Feels like there's a similar depth to things like Stardew Valley. Even though I've not played it myself, I own it, but I've seen people play it. And even though they know the NPC characters, they don't really change. Each Stardew Valley playthrough has like a different feel to it depending on where you start, how you approach it. And so there's some replayability there. And I find those kind of games way more appealing just from a weird time economic standpoint of like, if I'm going to invest in a game, not just the 20 or $30, because a lot of stuff I buy is indie stuff, but if I'm going to invest in that kind of game, it's nice to know that I will be playing it for quite some time. I can return to it and come back to it. And so like there's been an update in the experimental version on Satisfactory, and I haven't gone back to it because it's not in the early access. It's only in the unstable like experimental build. And so I've got quite a lot of time invested, probably 500 hours when you all total it up, which is scary to think about. In my main playthrough on Satisfactory. So I'm waiting for it to hit early access so that I can update pipes and do new things. Because someone popped into my stream the other day and they're like, hey, how come you don't play Satisfactory anymore? Like, how come I don't see those streams? And they were worried that I had no longer lost interest in the game. I was like, oh no, I'm still very interested in the game. I just know from development news that there's an update coming, and I don't like doing things twice. So why would I build my giant fuel factory with current tech in the game when I know that pipes are being upgraded in the next little while? Like, I'll just wait. I'll go play something else. And it's nice to have a breadth of those games that you can just kind of pick up, put down, and return to. Things like Spiritfarer, things like No Man's Sky. I find that No Man's Sky has become a little bit repetitive as per usual, but you know, Minecraft is always something I can go back to and fill in some stream content and have some fun while I'm waiting for a change of pace. And you know, Borderlands 3, I took the opportunity when Satisfactory was something I wasn't going to play for a bit. Borderlands 3 rose up to be my number 2 game because it's very different than Minecraft. It's very different pacing wise. It's an adult game. It's not kid friendly at all. So it's kind of like a nice shift for me. But yeah, so I know that whenever I see you streaming, you've been streaming Spiritfarer. Like, are there other things that are on your list or things that you have been streaming?
Well, now that I have a new PC,
nice.
Not a new PC. I have a new PC case. So it's got. I came at the suggestion of a friend, and he was like, oh, "Don't worry, we'll go change the LEDs." I'm like, I kind of like the LEDs, so I have 4 fans in there, and they have an RGB LED cycle. And it just goes through the rainbow, and apparently it's called unicorn vomit, which delights me to no end. I'm super into it. and it just cycles, and he was just like, "Ugh, we can change that for you." I'm just like, no, I'm happy to keep it. I mean, the only thing I like, if we had to change it, I might change it to my brand colors, which are kind of like pink, purple, blue. So I might just like change it to the brand colors and have it cycle through those. But I kind of like the rainbow. It's the unicorn vomit. I like it. That's kind of what it looks like. But I now have a spot to put USB 3.0 ports, which is what is the requirement for my Elgato HD60S capture card. So, which is again a very generous community goal. So we were able to get the capture card, and I people have been like, capture card, we're gonna play any Switch games at some point soon, and it's like, yep, as soon as I update the computer. So I just did that because people have been waiting, so now we can play things like Animal Crossing.
Nice.
We've been playing Crash Bandicoot. So I played Crash Bandicoot on a PlayStation, and I never played the first one. I never played Crash 1 or Crash 2. So it was like, I don't even know what they're called. Crash Bandicoot. The second one is called something. Anyway, I always jumped into Warped. Warped was kind of my first experience with Crash, so it's the one I'm the most familiar with. So I immediately jumped into that one, and I've been having a great time because it feels really nostalgic, but it's also kind of gotten a little bit of a facelift. However, the controls that I have right now, because you're using the Switch controllers, there's not enough, like, pull on the Joy-Cons. So when I'm doing driving, like, there's like a couple levels that I hate, and I hated them as a kid too, but there's a couple levels where you have to, you're basically on a bike, and the goal is to get first place to get like the crystal that you need. The Joy-Cons don't have enough movement to just move it slightly. It's like when you move a little bit to the left, it's cranked all the way to the left, so your character is just like, well, I'm gonna drive off the road, so it's been a bit of finessing. And there was one stream where I managed to get to the first. I was like, I've lost, and then I somehow got first, and I was like, I don't know how that happened, but it was really exciting. So it's been nice. It frustrates me, but it's fun because it reminds me of playing these games when I was a kid, and it's been nice because my brother's been popping into my stream sometime to come watch, and he was like, oh, this is nostalgic, this is great. And he's like, I think, and part of it is also kind of swallowing a piece of humble pie, because I'm like, I was so great at this when I was a kid, I'm gonna be like, no problem, there's gonna be no issues. I've died so many times, and it's been I'm not as good at gaming as I once was when I was a child, but it's been nice to kind of go back and revisit the game, and I might go back at some point and visit Crash 1 and Crash 2, because I don't really know much of the story. My one thing is, though, I'm not sure if this is a capture card issue or a Switch thing, but all of the character dialogue in the game, particularly around the villains or like any cutscenes, there's no dialogue. You can't hear their voices, and I don't know why, and I've yet to figure it out. And I don't know if this is just a factor of the game, if it's just a setting. I don't think so. But there's like opening cutscenes where you can hear the background music, and you can hear sound effects, and you can hear noises, but the dialogue is just not there.
I've had stuff like that happen before, where I'm watching something on a streaming service where closed captioning is coming up for some things, but not everything.
Right.
And you're just like, well, wait a minute. Like, I get if it's fine. Like, if there's some nondescript police officer in France speaking in French, and it's not really important, and from the gesture, you're getting the whole like license and registration, please, or like, like I don't need a full translation. But then in the next scene, you're talking about like two scientists that are having a conversation at length, and you're just like, I should really kind of know what this like. I should know what's being said. Yeah, this sounds
important.
And then you go to turn on the closed captioning, because like obviously the subtitles aren't working, and then the closed captioning just says speaking French, and it's like, well, that I don't know what's going on. And I find that happens a lot with streaming media, particularly on one specific service. But like it's one of the things that I've been battling with. I haven't had any. Well, I shouldn't say that. Actually, my last boss fight on Borderlands, one of the characters that's key to that part of the story is talking to you about the vault. This is the big boss battle at the vault, and she's introducing the vault. And there's another bit of dialogue that activates when you get close enough to her. And so I, at this point in the game, know what I'm doing. So as she's talking to me over the radio, I'm getting closer to the center of the room. And then she switches from radio to being talking in person. It's one of the coolest thing that the game does is that when the NPC is talking and you go too far away, they come in over comms. And then when you get close enough, it stops over comms and it starts to be like an in-person conversation. But when I got close enough to her, she stopped the history lesson on the vault and said, "Oh, to open the door, just put your key in that thing right there." And I was like, "What? Why?" I appreciate that me being close enough to you triggered the next step. Why in the coding does it not say finish the sentence before
Yeah,
like she was
like that's always been an issue with a lot of games. Yeah, I noticed
rough.
that with Mass Effect when we were going through some Mass Effect stuff. If you like trigger something, it's like, well, there goes all this historical dialogue.
Yeah,
every time, and I feel like I hope that now I know that some people don't like that when it comes to replaying the game. It's like, oh, I'd already know this. Yeah. So I wish there was an option to skip if need be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's it, especially if you're interested in the lore of the world and you want to learn what's going on in the world. Like having that skipped over can be really frustrating.
Yeah, no,
really irritating.
I agree. And if I'm in for a chill kind of experience and I want to know that kind of stuff, then I don't like it when it's skipped. I prefer to have the option to, would you like, to ask, because he's like, ask this person about their history or just get the goods and move on. And so like you have the choice to trigger either one. I can appreciate that at some level it does kind of like take you out of the immersion when you have to press A or B to continue, rather than just a conversation flowing naturally. But I just think that if it's something important, like a story beat, that they should be, the dialogue should finish before the next trigger is then activated and stuff like that. So, But speaking of gaming, actually, I have some news. After my conversation with Ryan last week on the show, when we talked about the Xbox Series X, as well as PlayStation 5, we didn't get a chance to touch on the Quest 2 and the VR offerings. Generally, I don't necessarily know if they're there. The jury is still out on the Quest 2 in terms of like what it offers for pricing versus all the accessories that you need to make it viable. But I'm still researching that. But I have made the decision that because of the Xbox All Access plan, I'm going to be picking up an Xbox Series X next week.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's the first time.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's the first time I've had a console since 360. So it's been.
That means we can play some games together.
Yeah, yeah. So it should be really fun.
As long as they're cross-platform.
Yeah, I think a lot of them would be. Not a lot of them would be, but like the ones that I'd be interested in. For example, Minecraft Dungeons cross-platform.
Yeah.
That cross-platform for that's coming in December. So like that kind of stuff is going to be fun. I'm just interested in having not just a gaming experience that is not tied to streaming, because I do enjoy gaming to relax, but right now a lot of what I'm doing for gaming, because of the money I invested in the streaming computer, I do tend to stream when I'm gaming or not game at all. And so having a couch experience with some games that, like, I don't necessarily think that playing Assassin's Creed is something that I would want to stream, because that for me is an immersive experience and I don't want to have to stop and read a chat room, when I'm playing Assassin's Creed. So, and I can see myself being very quiet during that thing, because like you're also kind of sneaking around, and it would be really odd, like as you're sneaking up on bad guys, to be just like, so how's everybody's Tuesday going? Like it feels like an odd thing.
Yeah, I think with games like that though, people kind of expect it to. It's like if you're focused on something, it's just like, all right, they're just invested. Well, and so I don't think that'd be a problem.
And herein lies the beauty in that I have to make sure that it works with a game like Assassin's Creed, but like with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is part of the All Access purchase, which is, for those of you that didn't listen last week, it's $40 a month for 2 years. You get your Xbox Series X and you get access to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for 2 years. You're tied into that, but it's cheaper in the long run than doing them separately. Unless you only wanted Xbox Game Pass for like a couple of months, but like I am not so heavy a gamer that I see myself investing $70 in titles every time I want to play a new game, paying something like $16 to $17 a month for access to hundreds of games, some of which I might try and not like, some of which I might try and love. That to me is 100% worth it. I'm definitely in for all the games as a service, especially because Xbox Game Pass Ultimate crosses over to PC. So the same $16.99 gets me access to some Xbox titles, it gets me access to some PC titles, and it gets me access to things that are on both. And people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's also cross saves. So if I play for a little bit on the Xbox and I save it and I want to continue on the PC and stream it, I can do that, which is just a no-brainer business decision for me, because it means that I don't have to fork over the $600 Canadian plus tax up front for an Xbox Series X. It means for $40, just like when you sign up for a new phone contract, you get the new thing.
Right.
So the fact that after doing some research, it is actually cheaper, and that if I was to buy an Xbox at $600, I would be getting the Game Pass anyway and keeping that for at least a year, if not longer. And I've been holding off on grabbing Xbox Game Pass because I knew that the new consoles are coming, because I would have done it for my PC a while ago. But now, along with the Xbox, comes controllers that I can then also use in the PC. So I don't need to use a capture card. I just play the game on the PC with the controller and just stream it there if I want to. So there's just a lot of things that make sense about it. And in the process of not having to fork over $600 for the Series X, that means that I can upgrade my television, which is what I'm planning on doing. And right now, after doing quite a bit of research, I believe I have settled on the TCL 55-inch 6 series 4K TV, and that's at tcl.com for people that are interested. And they sell, you'll have to find a local retailer. They usually retail right now, it's between $850 and $900 Canadian. Because a lot of what turned me on to TCL was a lot of very low prices, I thought, for 4K TVs. But of course, then I realized that the podcasters were talking in American dollars. And so once I have to, convert that by 27 to 30% to get it in Canadian, it's still a 4K TV. It's a QOLED for under $1,000 is pretty sweet for 55. And 55 is kind of like your standard these days. There's not a whole lot that's smaller than that. There are other models of the TCL that you'll see for $400 at like Costco and Walmart, but they're either the 4 series or the 5 series. And for the same amount of money or even less money, I can get like a 65-inch TV. But you've been to my place. I don't know that I need a 65-inch TV when I only sit 7 feet from it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like a cat with a laser on the wall when I'm playing video games. Like, I don't want to have to turn my head.
Yeah, you don't want to have to look. Yeah.
I don't want to get dizzy.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
So I think 65 inches is going to be too much for my space. And all of the cheaper 4 and 5 series are native 60 hertz panels. They squeak out to 120 hertz when you add like motion smoothing. I hate motion smoothing. I have no desire to use it whatsoever. And a friend of mine, John, has, I think, the 4 series, and he can turn motion smoothing off. I figured if I'm buying a new TV in 2020, I'm probably going to go for the one that is natively 120 hertz on the panel, which is going to be better for gaming, which is the main purpose. And one of the reasons that TCLs are so affordable is that they're not OLED. They're like mini LED QLED, which is like in between LED and OLED. And so it just basically means it's a really nice panel for something that's affordable. And it's got 4 HDMI ports, which is lots for me. And so I'm looking forward to it. It's going to solve a lot of things. It's also a Roku television. So I'll be switching my set-top box provider, which is great. It means one less thing because I don't have to have something else plugged in to the TV. And plus the Xbox these days will, of course, have a Netflix app and, other streaming services. So depending on how I like the Xbox Series X interface, I may not need the Roku part of the TV. I might just use the Xbox for all of my media needs, right?
Yeah, that's what Colin does, because he just has like all of his streaming services on his Xbox.
So I am holding off on that until I can sort out what the Black Friday deals are going to be. At present, Best Buy has it listed as part of their Black Friday offering at $10 off, which is, I don't care. Like, that's not really a sale. When it's a $900 TV on for like $889, it's like, that's not, I technically sure it's on sale, but like whatever. So I'm waiting to see if there's going to be better deals at other retailers, later on in the month. Cause I don't need it right this minute. But with November 10th being the day that I can order the Xbox, hopefully that won't take weeks and weeks to get to me. But I would like to have the TV for around the same time that I have the Xbox, because I would like to not have to play the Xbox on a small, crappy TV for a couple of weeks before
Right.
moving to the big one.
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of
Right.
calibrate and do all that once, like tear the television unit apart once and put it together once, and then I should be fine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I did some measuring, and turns out that the stand that I have now is just wide enough to have a 55-inch TV on it, which is going to be great. So I'm looking forward to that, because it's been years since I've updated a TV. Plus, watching things like I mentioned, I'll talk about this later, but watching shows like Star Trek or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or anything like that, they're bigger on better on a nice TV. So
Yeah.
I'm investing in a panel. I could save a couple $100 and get like last year's model, but I investing in a television that you're hoping is going to last the better part of 8 to 10 years. Like, I'd rather spend the extra $200 on a better panel and just get more technology out of it, rather than trying to get a bigger screen size. So,
That makes sense.
I'm still on I still have a little bit of me is like, meh, are you going to regret not getting a 65? But like a 65 in the new panel, that gets up into the $1,200 range, and that's out of my budget. Like, that's not, I'm no longer willing to spend that on a TV when I know that I can get one almost as good for much, much less. And so it's part of it is like just the consumer electronics knowledge that I have is like, nope, I don't need to go down that road.
Nope.
No, but one of the things that I'm looking forward to watching, or perhaps rewatching on a 4K TV, is going to be some of the documentaries on Netflix, like Our Planet or Planet Earth, or some of those BBC things where like they were filmed and shot in these beautiful cameras, and I just didn't really get to experience them the best way that I could. And so even if it's a matter of getting like a high def Blu-ray or something like that, because you can use the Xbox for that, I'm looking forward to experiencing some of that kind of content. I'm not going to run out and buy like a 4K version of Lord of the Rings or whatever. That's fine. I have one. I'm sure it upres is fine. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so stuff like that, it's going to be a really cool experience. But speaking of documentaries, that's one of the things that I watched over the last week. I watched Brave Blue World: Racing to Solve Our Water Crisis on Netflix. It's a documentary. Yeah, it's about, well, as it says on the tin, it's about the current problem in the world with water. The trailer, which we'll have linked in the show notes, is a little dramatic. They kind of took all the edgy quotes from the people that are speaking and kind of put it into the trailer. And I want to give people a heads up. It is not all doom and gloom. Similar to the last David Attenborough, Richard Attenborough? David Attenborough documentary that I watched about his life. Again, it wasn't all doom and gloom. He was poignant about saying, like, this is it. We have to start working towards better things now. But he was also very hopeful at the end of it. And with Brave Blue World, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, in the last week, I can't say I was really in the mood to watch anything that was about like major climate change catastrophes and all this kind of stuff. You know, like, you just kind of have to measure the amount of bad news that you get. And I was pleasantly surprised that this documentary was mostly about the cool technology and the efforts to solve the global water crisis, on how different countries, organizations, and communities and engineers are addressing the problem. Not about governments ignoring it, not about like the problems. It was like, here are several solutions that are in process, and enough information for people to then go and kind of like research and see what they might be able to do. Unfortunately, if it's not just like donating to a cause or great financial investment as a homeowner, or if you're in an apartment like we are, there's not a heck of a lot you can do other than just conserve water, right? Like, you're not in charge of the plumbing system for the building. So there's not a lot that you can implement. But in some of the research that I did after the documentary, a couple of organizations kind of rose to the top in terms of what I remembered from the documentary, but also very easy to find websites and easy to find information. Water.org, founded by Gary White and Matt Damon. 501c3, founded by Drew Fitzgerald and Jaden Smith. Yes, that Jaden Smith, by the way, that's Will Smith's son. And
Okay.
Hydroloop. I don't remember the founders of Hydroloop, but it's a Netherlands company, and they do residential gray water. But essentially, the documentary was made like in partnership, I think, with a lot of these organizations. The documentary was directed by Tim Neves and Eeves, narrated by Liam Neeson. There's also Matt Damon, Jaden Smith, and a couple of other people show up as well, including the founders of some of these other organizations that I'm not. There's more than three. There's like 6 or 8 different stories in the whole documentary, ranging from an apartment complex in India that took it upon themselves to install like water recycling systems in their units so that they are no longer dependent on municipal water as much as they used to be. And then some of the other stories, I don't remember the guy's company, but he was basically creating, and I should have looked this up because this is also a really cool story. The documentary is worth a watch, so I'm 100% recommending it for anybody that's listening to this, but also if you're a nerd, because there are some cool things that they're doing. This guy in Africa uses like a charcoal toilet. So it's like an outhouse situation where you don't actually flush the toilet. You don't get to remove the human waste from it quickly, but it's collected by, similar to how garbage men come around. Your charcoal toilet is essentially emptied by this company, and then they take it, they treat it, and they turn it into a coal alternative.
Oh. So that's cool.
So you can burn poop to fuel things, and it's I can't imagine it's a good smell. But well, I mean, the end product is probably fine. Otherwise, it wouldn't be marketable. But the process thereof, like that plant where they churn human waste into charcoal, probably not the best smell in the world. Still, the fact that like they're using this system to self-sustain, to provide energy, to reduce the amount of wastewater flowing through very tight, slum situations in, I think it was Kenya, or I can't remember where. It was in Africa somewhere. But it was just really, really cool stories. Then there's also like the more traditional side of things where you've got like water.org, which is a global nonprofit working to bring water and sanitation to the world. And this is where they throw out some stats that you're like, wait, what? How many people? So globally, 1 in 9 people lack access to clean water. It's something like 758 million people don't have access to clean water.
Wow.
1 in 3 lack access to a toilet. So depending on how many roommates you have, one of you not allowed to use the bathroom, right? Like that, just to kind of take that home. And what they do with what water.org does is they go the financial route. They partner with local organizations and they increase the access to small loans and smart solutions that people that are living in these very poor communities don't normally have. So they're not handing out solutions. They're saying, we're going to help you solve your own problem. And they've helped something like 30 million people access clean water with these small loans. And because they're loans, it helps water.org keep going, from what I can understand. I didn't get too much into it. They don't go in depth on every organization in the documentary. The documentary is more of a global documentary, but it gives you all the information you need to go dig later. So that was really cool. I'm looking into water.org, and I've heard about it before because I've heard Matt Damon speak about it on several occasions. But then 501c3, I think I'm pronouncing that right. This is the one with Drew Fitzgerald and Jaden Smith. They had the Water Box project, and I thought this was also really cool because it wasn't dealing with which is what a lot of people think of when they think of water crisis, which is like, third world countries, poverty, overcrowding, like India, China, all that kind of stuff. This was designed in response to the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, in the U.S. If you remember, in 2014, the water in the Civic Center was contaminated by lead. And
Still contaminated.
Yeah. So in the process of trying to get bottled water and packaged water in and out of this community, which is a huge logistics problem, the Water Box project was designed. And what they do is that they test the local community water find out what that particular problem is, and then they engineer the filter that goes in the water box specifically for that community, and then that community is responsible for testing the water, maintaining the water box, and they also find out like the best place for it, like where's the central location that's easy for everybody to get to. It was I think it was in conjunction with one of the Baptist church in the Flint, Michigan area. I have the website open here. It was the First Trinity Missionary Baptist Church is where they developed the alternative way to get water out to the community. And so both of these situations off the top are community-based, community outreach programs. So it's not here, let a bunch of like fancy movie stars, fix the problem for you. It's about long-term sustainable changes, which I think is fantastic because it also educates community. It means that they're not, if something happens where water.org goes away, the tools are still within the community. The knowledge is still there, right? Like it's not left. And I think that's super, super cool and important. And they didn't spend as much time on the water box as I wanted to. So I've got more kind of interesting things to look into on that. The biggest point of frustration for me was something like the Hydroloop, which is the company from the Netherlands. Now, it's a cool idea. It's a residential gray water system that recycles things like bath water, shower water, washing machine, wastewater, filters and purifies that so that you can reuse it within your house for flushing the toilet, washing machine, gardens, and swimming pools. So you can't drink it, but when you think about how much water you use in the course of a day, how much are you actually drinking? Right? I probably flush the toilet almost as much as I drink, right? In terms of how much water is used to flush a toilet. And then I wash my hands, after I use the bathroom. Of course I do. And it made me think of one of the Airbnbs that I stayed at when I was in Utah in 2017. And because of the shed nature and the way that he wanted to have the garage kind of set up and separate from the house, running plumbing was not always the easiest thing. Obviously, there was a sewer line per standards, but what he did for the sink for washing your hands in the toilet is that there was I said that funny. Washing your hands at the toilet, not in it. When you flush the toilet, when the tank was refilled, the water didn't go directly into the tank behind the toilet. The water came out of a faucet into a bowl on top of the toilet tank. And it would run for as long as the tank was filling, which was plenty of time to wash your hands. You just had to turn around. Like you just had to stand up, turn around, and then as you're flushing the toilet, there was a sign that says, "Don't worry, it's clean water. The tank is being filled by clean water. You're just washing your hands with it. So it's not the water that you just flushed, it's clean water, but you're basically using the wastewater from your hand washing in the next toilet flush," which makes sense. Rather than going to the sink using yet more water to wash your hands, right? So it's little things like that.
That's cool. I'm into that.
Yeah. So, and we've got things like that in Halifax. Actually, there's a gray water system on top of the new Halifax Market building downtown Halifax, and the water runoff from the roof is used for washing your hands, flushing the toilets in the building, stuff like that. So it reduces the amount of water being brought in from the city to do things like that. Because I think it was something like 95% of the water that we use ends up being thrown away in terms of how much water is used. And then they go into things like textile production, dyeing clothing and textiles in India, and how much water is wasted and thrown away or disposed of in unsightly manners. And contaminating rivers and stuff with dyes and bleaches and things like that. And I don't remember all the details, but there was essentially one of the companies is now, instead of 95% of their water being wasted, 95% of their water is being recycled. So they basically started shipping their water to a filtration company and then shipping it back. So the same water that's dyeing clothes today, after it's been filtered and brought back, it's being used to dye clothes tomorrow, not in the same 24 hours, but like that's essentially the idea, is that there's enough technology now that people are recycling these things. the Hydroloop is really cool because it's smaller than a water heater. Like it's that kind of a device that you can go and put in your house and save something like 3,000 liters a year. Not something that really affects you and I in apartment buildings, but it's something that I thought was interesting for people that are homeowning or building homes. Unfortunately, when I went to go look at Hydroloop's website, and then I started to do some local research for like water recycling equipment in Nova Scotia, could not find a price anywhere, which means that they're,
Really?
yeah, well, they're probably prohibitively expensive, and they more than likely have to come out, assess the house, assess the hookups, and then give you a quote. And I would imagine that the quote is just a lot, no matter what, because you're dealing with people coming out to install it. You're dealing with a very like newish kind of technology. The only time I saw numbers generated was on someone that was writing kind of like a broad article about recycled water tech, and the ranges were $1,000 to $20,000, which doesn't help anybody in terms of trying to narrow this down. So it could be affordable. I don't know what a new water heater costs, but if it was even twice what a new water heater would cost, like that would be something that I would look at if I owned a home.
Right.
But if it's cost prohibitive, or if there are local building restrictions, like there's a bunch of different stuff, in terms of building codes that I'd imagine get really finicky. But the way that it was presented in the documentary, in a way that a lot of these solutions were presented, is that this is all technology that exists, and it's just not the norm for some reason. Like these filters are all very capable, and they're not terribly expensive, but it's landlords, it's tenants not knowing, it's built like, say for example, like because I was thinking like, well, what can I do? Like if I don't live in a house where I can say, all right, I'm going to take control of my own life. I'm going to install a gray water system, depending on how expensive it is. And the way that they equate it to in some of these articles that I found were like solar panels. They didn't really start to be installed on so many homes until the cost of the panel became feasible, where it offset the money that you were saving. Like when it becomes financially viable and sensible to switch to more solar power, that's when people do it. It's harder to convince people to do it ahead of that because it's too expensive. The entry point is just not there. And that's what the argument that water.org makes, is that, yeah, like you can't expect impoverished countries and impoverished communities to have, one, the education, two, the money to get these systems in place. But if you, and they can't apply for loans because that system is broken, and they're just, they don't get looked at, when all they need is a loan to get things off the ground. And once they're off the ground, then it frees up all kinds of opportunities. And so that's what water.org does, is that it focuses on the financial bottlenecks that these communities face. And I was feeling the same sort of bottleneck, like as a tenant in a building, I can't put any pressure on the landlord, to install a $20,000 system. I'm using a big number for dramatic purposes, in the building, without expecting in our, region with no rent control, rent could go up by $200, Now I don't want my rent to go up by $200 forever, because I don't know exactly what's going on with the water control system. But what I was thinking is that, like, I've got questions about building regulations. And so the next time it comes around for me to vote in a municipal election or a provincial election or even a federal election, I'm going to be digging in to see what pressure can be put on regulations to say, like, when new buildings get built, it won't be this year, but like in 5 years, depending on when that election is, when new buildings get built, can we make it so that they have to have recycling systems? That's just a rule. And if you can start to get legislation in place, then that way, when people do move into an apartment building, one of the things that, people that are renting those apartments could sell is say, like, oh, by the way, this is a gray water building. Like, so 90% or 70% or whatever the stat is of your wastewater from shower, washing machine, dishwasher sort of thing it's being reused. Sewage still goes to sewage treatment plants. That's not gray water. But But if you could, like, that would be a huge selling point to me, and I think a lot of other people.
Yeah.
If you could live in a place like that. So I feel like I've been ranting.
Yeah.
But, like, have you heard of this?
Especially if it was already like I've heard of something kind of similar. Like I'm sure we've talked about it in the show before, like Earth ships.
Yes. Yep.
That kind of do the whole gray water system. But I didn't realize that they were. I thought you had to like. I thought that was only like possible in very, very certain circumstances or environments or communities. So to find out that it can be implemented with normal everyday amenities and comforts while still, helping to save the planet, I think that's great. And especially if it doesn't cost that much to do. If you need to take out a small loan to like have that done, I think that's the best. I don't understand why we're all not doing that.
Exactly. And really it comes down to so much of the population, especially in, say, North America, living in apartment buildings, living in dense downtown areas where the dependency is on old, difficult to maintain systems, right? Like it's just, you're, well, no, the thing, if you were on your own well, you'd have the advantage because you would just have to, like, if you're in a house with a well, you would just have to look into the costs of a water recycling system and figure out if you can afford it. Like if it's feasible, then it's like you can continue to pay the same hydro bill. Because this is the thing that, heat and hot water for me is included in my rent. And I don't have a water bill. Like if I turn on the tap for cold water, there's nothing. Whereas if I had a house in the city, there'd be a hydro bill. So like if you have that kind of control, then you just look at what you're paying in hydro, look at what you'd be investing in the water recycling system and see if that balances out. It's the same way that people look at solar panels or alternative energy for their houses. Like I'm going to invest, I don't know, I'm going to throw out a number, $10,000 in these solar panels, but I currently pay, say, as a household, $100 a month in electrical fees, like for my power company. And if in the process of 5 years you've paid off the solar panels, but then on the outside of that your power bill is now $50 a month, then that's worth it in the long run once you kind of like work out all the finances. You'd have to do the math on it, but it's the same sort of situation.
It wouldn't be something you'd figure out right away.
No, but it's the same sort of thing. Like I did look into to see if there were affordable solar panels for me to put on my balcony to then run a wire inside to charge phones, charge devices. Like how much of the power that I use is recharging mobile tablets and phones? Like a lot, whereas I mean, like, sure, the computers are on all day long, and I there wouldn't be enough energy to power those. But like, there's a good chunk of things in the house, like recharging speakers, recharging rechargeable batteries, like all of that kind of stuff. I could just hook up to a solar panel if they were financially viable. And some of them are, some of them aren't. It runs into the point of like, you have more control if you own the house and you can then put it where you want it. Whereas I would have to find a temporary way to attach it to a balcony or put it up in a window or something like that.
Exactly.
And then you run the problem of like, well, how do I get the wires inside? Like there's a bunch of different things that come in there. So you do run into these bottlenecks, but there's not a lot you can do in an apartment. And I find it very, very frustrating that tenants like you and I don't have a way to put pressure on landlords to have these systems or install or even look into alternative methods of stuff. Like I don't have a way to do it,
I don't watch a lot of documentaries, but every time I watch a documentary, I'm just like, damn, that's a really good documentary. I should watch more. And it happens every single time. And I'm going to put that on my radar.
Yeah, I would 100% recommend it. And well, I'll have links to water.org, 501c3 and Hydroloop in the show notes for people to go and kind of like look up their own options and look for things and see what might be available in their community. And I think that's the key point, is that it's not about how to, the focus of the documentary and the focus of these resources is not how to fix the world's water crisis. It's how to fix the water crisis in your backyard. And it's a trickle down effect. Like if everybody does that, then it'll just start to fix itself. Like, and there's stats that they obviously tell you in the documentary about, look, if everybody just saves like this much, this is how much it will affect the actual world at large, which I think was really cool. So, but that's kind of it for me for what I've been watching, because it was kind of an intense week.
No, it's good. Some good stuff.
What's been on your big screen this week?
So I kind of accidentally fell into this show called Glow, and apparently it's a real story based on the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling network from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of I guess it predates WWE, or it's it was like the first women-led wrestling show or network. Because at this point, I guess women weren't involved in WWE. Anyway, it was it was on for a very brief amount of time. But the show itself is a drama, and it doesn't say based on true events, but Colin said he watched a documentary about them later in life, and they were talking about it, and I guess the show is kind of inspired by it. It's got amazing design. I just love the 80s. I don't know what it is. I love the music of the 80s. I love the 80s fashion, hairstyles. It is so campy and so outrageously 80s in a way that I really, really enjoy. And it kind of, it's really interesting to see how, see these it's like this group of misfit women who kind of come together and make this show, this weird, wrestling show, and it somehow gets traction, and there's a lot of fans that become really interested in it, and it's meant to be a fun, they've basically figured out that it was a soap opera. The narratives and the storylines that happen in wrestling shows like WWE is essentially a really overdramatic macho soap opera. And it plays into how much of a performance it is, not a, it's not real wrestling. It's purely for the campiness of it. And it doesn't shy away from that at all. So the costumes are just super outrageous, and, it's I don't know if I can quite quantify what I like about it. I think it's nice to see, women-led shows where it shows how capable women are, especially in the time the 80s. There's one character in particular, she's dating this big macho business guy, and she's just kind of there to look pretty for dinners and stuff, and they don't think that she understands anything that they're talking about business, but then she kind of comes in and snakes away a deal, a purchase deal, with another, colleague. But it's some of the characters are all very, very rich and complicated. I don't think we've learned a lot about all of them yet, which is unfortunate, because I just found out last night that apparently the show has been canceled. It's on 3 out of 4 seasons, and the last season was canceled with apparently no sign of it coming back at all, and it was canceled due to COVID. So it was 3 weeks. It was 2 or 3 weeks into filming before they shut it down. They're just no, we're just going to cancel it. We're not even going to bother keeping it going, which I find really stupid, because you've already sunk this money into it to do it. So I don't understand why they're not just finishing the last season, because they know it's going to be the last one. So unfortunately, the 3rd season ends on a cliffhanger. So I guess watch it at your own discretion. You don't really know what the outcome is, but there are a lot of storylines that are still have yet to be completed. There's some characters struggling with sexuality, and some of them are like open about the fact that they're gay, and others are very, very internally homophobic and trying to navigate that. And it deals with racism and poverty in really fascinating ways. And it I don't know, it's definitely a drama. I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking television by any stretch of the imagination, but I find it very compelling. I think just because of how interesting it looks. And it also is just, I've never really been one for wrestling myself. I kind of, over the last 5 years, was introduced to WWE. It's fun to make fun of. It's fun to watch with a group to make fun of. I don't think I would ever be I'm a fan of wrestling. It's more just, this is just a fun, good time. And it's be these people are very over the top. They're very, very terrible actors, but I don't know, I don't even know how to quantify it. The show's really good. I would highly suggest it. Just don't, expect to figure out how it ends, I guess.
It's weird. Did you say it was a Netflix original?
I don't know if it's a Netflix original, but it's on Netflix.
On
so
Netflix,
the
right.
last 3 seasons, or the three of the 4 seasons are on Netflix, and they started shooting the 4th and final season this year, but they had to shut it down because of COVID, and I guess they were just like, it's canceled.
Because the reason I ask is because Netflix just increased their prices across the board, certainly in U.S. and Canada, just not by a lot. It's like $1 a month. But the excuse that they gave in the newsletter, which, I mean, take it or leave it, is that they want to invest in more high quality content. Usually you would think that competition from other streaming services would entice companies to lower the costs to be more competitive. But in listening to a story about this on one of my favorite podcasts, the Daily Tech News Show, they were saying that, it might be a reverse strategy of like, well, let's just see how many people stay and pay the extra dollar, and then we can invest that in better content so that there's less of a, well, yeah, there's a bunch of this other stuff and a few of these Netflix shows that really go gangbusters. Instead, people are hopefully going to go to Netflix for the hits. I have also seen one of my favorite shows, Longmire, that was on A&E, get canceled and then get picked up and finished by Netflix. They finished the last season. And in a much better way in that in traditional television, like when you're a Wyoming sheriff trying to solve murders, some bad stuff is going to happen. Chances are you're going to drop, shit time to time. You're going to swear, or, rougher things are going to happen than when would be allowed to be shown on television. And so the Netflix final season, well, it didn't go over the top. It wasn't like a gore fest. It did get a little bit grittier. And I find that when bad stuff happened, the characters in this, kind of like not, well, I guess it would be rural, small town. They acted accordingly and used language that would make more sense. And to me, it felt more real. And so I really enjoyed the last season. They also didn't have to break for commercials like they did. So the structures of the episode, while were very similar in length to broadcast TV, were not exact. And so I felt that the story would benefit, from that. So hopefully, cross your fingers, maybe Glow will get, its wrap up on Netflix.
I hope so, because it was very good. And there's so many like storylines that need to be completed. Like there was one that was introduced at the midway through season 2, I believe, 2 or 3. That has just never been addressed again. It was talked about one time in like the ending of an episode and never discussed ever again. There's a weird relationship. Now, some of the relationships with some characters, I'm just like, this is really weird. And I don't know if it's just because all the men have mustaches. I don't know what it is. They all just look really awkward, and I don't understand why anyone would want to date them. But I just don't like mustaches, and they all just happen to have mustaches. I don't know. It's that seems like a really weird generalization to make, but there's part of my brain that's just like, this is a really weird relationship, and I don't like it. There's one older guy. He's like the director, and one of the main characters of the show. Her name's Ruth. She's like 29. She's like 30 or something. She's like in her early 30s, and she's she's a struggling actress. Like her goal is to be an actress, and she hasn't been doing very hot at it, so she got in for like a last minute audition for this weird wrestling show that's directed by this kind of washed out director named Sam, and he ends up falling in love with her, and then she randomly falls in love with him, but it doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't, there's no chemistry at all, so I don't understand why it happened in the first place. But anyway,
it sounds like it has a cult following, and hopefully it's large enough that though that kind of thing might make it to a Netflix production. The production companies are Tilted Productions, Perhapsatron, and Fan Dancer. The original distributor of the show is Netflix. So while it's a Netflix originally distributed show, Netflix is not the producer of the show.
Right. I hope they pick it up, though.
Yeah. Well, if Netflix is the original network, then they would have a decent relationship with the production company. So perhaps there's hope there. I don't know enough. I've heard about it before. I've never actually watched an episode, but I've definitely heard it brought up on other podcasts that I listen to about streaming media and fun shows. And I don't think it's been brought up on the Citadel Cafe before, but it might have. I'm not sure who would have brought it up, but it's ringing a bell enough that I've certainly heard of it.
I like it. I like it. I mean, like, there's definitely some things wrong with it. Again, it just deals with the racism thing, and it's like, in the 80s, having, making fun of or like stereotyping people based on race was like fine, but it kind of deals with, like, there is an aftermath of like how one character is struggling with this. Like, they all end up switching characters at one point, and one girl who's Asian is mad at a friend who took over her character and kind of like overdid the whole like stereotypical Asian voice and everything. And it kind of dealt with the fallout of why that was a bad thing. So it is addressing some things, which I appreciate, but
nice.
It's it's still very much based in the 80s, so there's still some bad takes, I think, but that's also a product of time. But it's also trying to address it in a way that's positive as well, like women trying to take empowerment or trying to take ownership of certain things, which I appreciate.
So I can't believe that it's taken me this long to even remember that I watched this, because in my notes for my next comment, which is the number of things that I'm now subscribed to for streaming services, I realized that one of those things I have to list is Disney Plus. And oh, by the way, watched the season opener of The Mandalorian, which we don't have time to talk about this week, but we'll have to come back and revisit probably next week.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed it. And if you're not watching it, boy, are you missing out. Really, really fun opener, especially for people that are Western fans. Just I'll leave it at that. Really, really good. But the reason why I bring that up is because I have resubbed to Crave and HBO Max, which this is the only way that I can get HBO in Canada, which is to go to the base level Crave, which is $9.99 a month, and then add $9.99 on top of that for HBO Max, which includes movies, but also the HBO original shows, which is mostly why I'm interested in it. I'm doing that because I'm catching up on Discovery Season 3 for Star Trek. We'll say nothing now, just letting everyone know that Alistair McFly and my friend James are coming on the show later on this month, same week as American Thanksgiving, so November 25th. This is James' first experience with Discovery. He's caught up on all the seasons. And obviously, Alistair and I have been watching Discovery since it came out, but we're just now, like, Alistair's been watching day and date season 3, and now I've caught up on season 3 and will be by the time we record. So I wanted to let everybody know, especially if you're Canadian, that you can get Discovery on Crave for $10 for the month. And I would argue that if for nothing else other than Discovery, the $10 for Crave is worth it now that there are 2+ seasons of Discovery. It's a good show. And if you enjoy Star Trek and you want to catch up and join in the conversation with us on November 25th with some questions, emails, thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Discovery. We will be happy to hear it because it's going to be a really fun conversation, I think. The other thing that I have to check out is Lower Decks. I haven't watched that yet. So that's coming. But my subscription bill now is rivaling what I was paying for cable years and years and years and years ago. Now that's combined with my internet bill. My internet bill, I paid over $100 a month for 100 megabits symmetrical. So I know not everyone has that access. Also, it's expensive in Canada. Yes, we know.
Unfortunately.
But now with $20 going to Crave, $16 going to Netflix, I think. I've got $10 going to Prime Video and another $10 going to Disney Plus. Like, that adds up something fierce. I'm now in the $160, $170 range for my internet / streaming services combined. So I'm looking at dropping one of those because I'm about to add $40 a month to that for Xbox All Access, which includes basically Xbox Game Pass is like Netflix for games. So I think I might actually drop Netflix for the time being. I should mention that Crave and HBO, they're staying for 2 months and then they're going away. I'm going to keep them over Christmas long enough to figure out when I'll probably keep them long enough to watch the end of Discovery, and then that's it.
Right.
In the 2 months over Christmas vacation in the last little bit, I know that I will find some things on HBO to watch. I'm going to catch up on Westworld. There's a new show called Raised by Wolves I want to watch. Stuff like that will round out the value of having HBO on there for 2 months. And if I have to remain sub to Crave for another month in the new year, then that's fine. But I don't know I'm going to be keeping Disney Plus beyond The Mandalorian because all of their other original content has been delayed until at least 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon Prime, I keep for the shipping, so that will just stay, even though I don't watch a lot of stuff on it. I like what I watch. The problem is that a lot of what's there is pretty dark, and I'm not into it right now, but it'll always be there.
Yeah.
But I am in the process of getting a bunch of things, for the house, for the apartment rather, through Amazon Prime. So the fact that the Amazon Prime stays because the shipping just outweighs the amount of time that I spend watching Prime Video. Prime Video is a nice perk when I'm bored, but really, the $10 a month is worth it for the shipping, because I've done shipping. I know what it costs to ship stuff when you don't have Prime, and it's rough,
Right.
in this part of the country. So I'd rather not. But I don't know. But I spend a lot of time on Netflix looking for something and don't really find much. And then when I find something, I don't often stick to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've been finding that too lately. I mean, I have the added benefit that we have a family subscription for Netflix, so my dad pays for that, which sounds spoiled, but he hasn't gotten rid of it, and the only thing I really pay for is Disney Plus. But I usually just end up watching YouTube, honestly.
Yeah, and I find too that a lot of my breakfast, I'll watch Minecraft videos on YouTube or some other kind of content.
Yeah.
So I've got other avenues as well. Disney Plus, again, I find that The Mandalorian is worth the $10. There are some speaking of those, that new TV, those Disney documentaries from National Geographic. I will definitely be watching those before I cancel, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are things I will go through and check out before I unsub. But something I did find very easy to do with both Crave and Disney Plus. Can't speak to Netflix. I imagine it's probably just as easy, but canceling Disney Plus and Crave was very simple. Crave doesn't delete anything. It just stops charging you. So you can still go and browse Crave. It just says, by the way, in order to watch anything here, you have to resub. So it's nice that you can revisit Crave without subbing and just look to see what you're missing, which makes sense. And so I canceled Crave way back when Game of Thrones ended, and I just haven't been back. No, sorry, it would have been the last time that Discovery, the last season of Discovery is when I canceled Crave. And so I've just been waiting to come back. And so it's easy to pick up and put down. And I like that. I like that I can just sub for 2 months, cancel it, and be done. And then whenever Picard has been delayed until 2021. So when that picks up again, I'll probably resub to Crave and watch that. And those are things that are available on the base. But I wanted to let everybody know that, Trek is coming back to conversations here at the Citadel Cafe. And so you can look forward to more of that later on in the month. That brings us into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. Listen, do you hear the ads? Neither do we, because it's your fault. We don't need them because you folks are kind enough to support the show. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. That gets you access to the member-only Discord server, as well as access to any bonus episodes that we do over the course of the pandemic. We've allowed that to happen at all the tiers. We're down a patron. We're down to 21. We were at 22 a month ago. And so I'd like to try to add one more patron each month. So if you're thinking about supporting independent podcasting and keeping us on the air, then check out patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe, become a member, and know that you are helping us make the podcast each and every week. I really can't thank everyone enough. We mentioned, supporters of Twitch communities and donations and stuff earlier for Megan and I when we stream. It's just as important to me, the people that support us on Patreon. Now it is the beginning of the month, and so the Patreon processing is going through, and it's basically payday at the Citadel Cafe, and it does things like keep the website going, allow me the time to edit the podcast. It's all these kind of things, and it's because of you kind folks that we get to continue to do that. So thanks very much. And if you're interested, it's less than a latte a month. It's $1 a show or $4 a month to become a member. So check it out, patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. And boy, oh boy, do I have a fun pick for you this week. Disney has unveiled a new robot animatronic technology that is meant to have a more realistic and interactive robot gaze. The headline from The Verge is Disney's new skinless robot can blink in a human way, because why not? And the idea here is to try and combat the uncanny valley that happens when you're interacting with a animatronic character in, say, like a Disney ride, where everybody kind of goes, oh yeah, okay. It's like basically this stiff robotic thing. But with AI these days and some of the more are the finer motor controls that they have in these animatronic setups, they're trying to use eye tracking, which is a relatively new technology as far as like consumers are concerned, to increase the engagement of the artificial robot. In that they will look at you and hold eye contact because they know where your eyes are because the robot's tracking your eyes, but also engage in human behavior like not looking at you, looking away for a beat while they think or talk about something. I say think with in quotation marks because it's acting, right?
Yeah.
But then also when you look at someone in the eyes, you don't stay still. Your eyes subtly will dart back and forth. And that movement is called cicada, not to be confused with cicada, the bug, but succada, SACCADA is the movement name. And previously that was really hard to do. And so by having this robot do that, it is uncanny, pardon the pun, how lifelike it becomes when these little movements are added. It's something that as an animator, we were talking about way back even in the early aughts when I was animating stuff, adding that like character staring off into space, focal distance changing in the eyes gives that thought process to what is ultimately just a drawing. And this robot in the video has no skin. It's basically like a skull with teeth and eyelids. And so it looks really freaky, but it's just interesting and engaging how lifelike it appears because of these subtle eye movements, and how if the robot is looking down and a person walks up to it, it looks with its eyes first and then turns its head. Like it's these layers of movement that really get you. We'll have a link to the video in the show notes. It is.
I love the way Disney's new skinless robot can blink like a human, because why not?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot more information underneath it, like in the articles. There's links to other things about like how robots are working these days and eye tracking and stuff. But it's awesome and also creepy at the same time. But like I kind of would love to have something like this that would animate to whatever voice assistant you're using in your house. Like imagine if this is just like a bust, like you used to see those busts of Beethoven on like pianos and stuff. It would be amazing to walk into your house and just like, insert activation word here, turn on the lights. What's the weather like today? And have this thing kind of like look at you like, oh, hi there. And just kind of explain.
No, that's like that. Well, like, I'm looking at it right now and I'm just like, this is horrific. Well, also because there's no skin on it.
Well, yes,
so you're just seeing teeth and like eyes with like moving gyros and everything.
But what if it was a teddy bear? What if it was a cat? What if it was like a cat and the cat had that kind of like, what's the name of the talking cat from Sabrina the Teenage Witch? Like that kind of a Salem, like having a little black cat on your coffee table that would kind of turn and like give you the weather would be. I think it would be kind of fun.
I played Detroit Become Human.
Right.
This doesn't end well.
Yeah. No,
this doesn't end well.
I get that. Anyway, I thought it was really interesting, and it's one of those things where you see it in like Disney tech and like theme parks first, but then eventually it's going to roll down into, consumer electronics and things like that. I mean, like I can't say I want a zombie bust on my coffee table, but if I had a C-3PO in the corner that would give me the weather, I would probably have that. Like I would want one. I would want one of those.
I'm watching it right now. It's fascinating. It's really unnerving.
Yeah.
Because it's really realistic eye movements and subtle head movements as well, like fluttering eyelids and like. Now, I think the thing that's free, if it were just the eyes, if I could just like block out the teeth, because all you see is like this like these pair of dentures with a bunch of technology around it, and that's really unnerving looking. But if you're like. The way the eyes move is incredible. Wow. Yeah, everyone should take a look at that. It's scary. Maybe not for kids. I think as a kid, I would be really afraid of this.
Yeah, really
I'm
little
a little
kids.
Unnerved right now.
It is. It's a little bit freaky in that way. I think
that's cool though.
I think it would be good of them if they want this to kind of like catch on or showcase it more, to do it with a robot that you can actually. I mean, this was showcasing the technology underneath, so that's why it doesn't have anything on it. But if you put like
Right.
a silicone puppet, like in like any kind of like special effects mastery over top of this, it's going to look really cool.
Or if you put like, I don't know, I know that a lot of their animatronics right now for for new theme parks and stuff, if you put like, I don't know, Elsa on top of it, or like, actually put like a Disney character
Right.
over it, I think that would be really interesting, and that would maybe make it look a little bit softer, because it's still in your brain, it's like, this is evidently not real because it's it's stylized. But
And it's the kind of thing, like right now it's of all human proportions, looks like a human male. But
Right,
if it
yeah.
was not that, but what if it was like a 2-foot tall animatronic Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast, and
Yeah.
its eyes, while animatronic, would be cartoony, like it wouldn't be realistic.
Yes.
But it would be neat if it was that engaging. And there would be just that little bit of, I don't know what it would be, like the suspension of disbelief would be just a little bit more when you're engaging with an animatronic like that. Because I remember going to Disney World when I was 10, and even like back then, even as young as I was, even the animatronics, like, whoa, wow, that is a robot.
Yeah, it's very unnerving looking, yeah. But like the I've seen videos of like people, like some people will just record through the parks, and like go through rides and stuff. And there's a couple that I've seen that are amazing. Like someone went through the new Pandora area for James Cameron's Avatar.
Right.
And it's like a boat ride, so you're basically going through, it's basically Pirates of the Caribbean, just Pandora. But there's one like full animatronic of like a Na'vi like moving, and their movement is so fluid and so natural. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's how smooth everyone moves. And I've seen videos of animatronics in like one of the Frozen rides, and like there's actual like animatronics of Elsa, and she's doing like a motion where she's like making magic happen, but like the fluidness of her arm is like, it looks like a person in a costume doing it.
Nice.
It's amazing. It's so cool. And so this is just kind of taking what they've already done, and I think expanding it to make it more realistic. My brain is kind of like, I don't know. Any single story we've ever had about AI has not ended well. Or like, having like humanoid looking robots. It's just always ended in a bad thing. But I'm still interested in seeing how that develops at the same time.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that Megan and I talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find us by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Word of mouth is by far the easiest way to support the show, however. It's free. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. You can also leave a rating on the Apple Podcast app or your podcast platform of choice. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I'm doing online at joelduggan.com. That includes links to my Spawn Chunks podcast, which is all about Minecraft. Brand new snapshot for the Caves and Cliffs update dropped yesterday. So we'll be talking about that this coming Monday. And you can also follow me on social media at Joel Duggan and twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I'm playing Minecraft and Borderlands 3 right now. But I'm going to be expanding that roster coming into the holidays. So check it out. Megan, where can people find you online?
People can find me online and Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Megan Townsend.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.